Okay, I think it's time that we can start. I want to welcome all of you to AFSA's Early and Mid-Career Retirement Planning webinar. I see that our numbers are up to about 200, and we expect more, and you may have noticed that you are automatically muted and that you are not on screen, and we're doing that just to save the bandwidth because we do expect a lot of people, so we ask that you keep your settings that way. You will have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat function, and we will get to as many as we can. We have an hour, and the presentation that John will give lasts about 40 minutes. And what I do ask is that you give us questions that would be germane to the group and aren't personal to your specific situation. And for those questions that we don't get to, we actually intend to group them or deal with them in our next retirement newsletter if they're broad questions that we think would be useful to for the whole community to be apprised of. So you know that we have sent you the PowerPoint and there's a checklist that John Nayland put together that is very clear and concise. If you don't have that now, there links to those documents are in your invitation, so you might want to print them out or save them after this presentation. And if you have any questions or if you have to drop off, you can actually, we are going to be taping or recording this presentation, so you will be able to listen to it on AFSA.org. I'd say about a week or two after the program in case you have to, go back to your duties or whatever. So, what I'd like to do now is introduce John Nayland. John has been the VP for retirees since 2017. He's in his second term now. John brings an incredibly rich background to this position. Besides really caring about retiree issues, he was the head of the retirement office in our Human Resources Bureau. So he knows this stuff chapter and verse. We are very lucky to have him to outline where you need to focus when you're thinking at this early stage. So with no further ado, here's John.
Okay, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter wherever you are in the world. This is great. We had 230 people this morning on the 7 a.m. webinar, and now we're over 320. So it's great that you all are doing your due diligence to plan for your retirement. So I laud you for that. As Dolores said, I ended my Foreign Service career being the director of the Office of Retirement, so quite a bit of experience there. But over the last 5 years, as a re-employed annuitant, I've worked at the Foreign Service Institute in the retirement planning sessions. And in that role, 10 or so times a year, I've facilitated presentations by the TSP rep and the Social Security rep and the Office of Retirement. So I've kept in touch with all of these factors over these years. That said, this is unofficial guidance. It's your retirement. You need to do the due diligence, consult official State Department publications, which a lot of them are on the AFSA website. And I'm going to mention this repeatedly, but the Foreign Service Institute has some great retirement planning courses, and I'll show you at the end. But this 1 hour presentation cannot take the place of, for example, one of the courses at FSI gives you 30 hours of instruction, so of information. So this is just the 30,000 foot view, and I'll do my best. But again, do your own due diligence. If I say something about the TSP before you rush out to move your TSP money, do some more research, maybe talk to a financial planner, because I guarantee you that if you do that, the stock market will either plunge or soar in the opposite direction of whatever you're doing. So yeah, do your due diligence. Just don't go off based upon my advice, no matter what background I may have. So this is about retirement planning, but I know that not all of you are sure if you're going to make it across that goal line to retirement. And you know, that's too bad. Our nation needs a strong foreign service, whether everyone in our nation understands that or not. It's been a tough period of years, but I hope better days are ahead. But if you make the decision to resign before you can get a pension, an annuity, retirement, I want to explain to you what you're giving up. And this is what you're giving up financially. There's more to life than finances, but this is going to focus on the finance. First of all, you give up your entitlement to a pension. Now, pensions are getting rare in the private sector, but what a pension is, it's an annuity. We use the terms interchangeably. It's a monthly check at the end. I'm a retired foreign service member. So the last day of every month in my SDFCU checking account, the Foreign Service Pension Fund sends me a check. And I'm going to get that to the day I die. And then if I die before my wife, she'll get a survivor pension for the rest of her life. So if you leave before you qualify for that, you give that up. Now, there are a couple exceptions here. One is a deferred annuity. And this is where you resign before you qualify for a pension, but you apply for it much later in life. And it's a reduced pension because obviously you haven't worked the 20 or 30 years that, for example, I did to earn a full pension. And we'll talk about deferred annuities a little more in a couple slides. And another option is you resign from the Foreign Service, you go into the private sector, and then you say, you know, well, I want to go back to the government. And it's probably impossible to get back in the Foreign Service, but you could possibly get a civil service position, or heaven forbid, get a politically appointed position. But if you come back into the federal government and you work enough years, then you can qualify with your foreign service time for a civil service pension. Now, it'll be calculated at the lower civil service rate, but still you would get a pension. So those are two options. Not many people do it. Most people say, give me my money. And that's where you get a refund of your retirement contributions. Now, if you look at your leave and earnings statement, you'll see how much you contribute every 2 weeks to the retirement fund. And you'll see it's not a huge number. So actually the government contributes a much higher percentage. So look at that, multiply that by 26 times a year and how many years you've worked, and you'll see that you're not going to get a huge amount of money back, but you'll get some money back. If you resign before you can qualify for retirement, you lose your federal health insurance. And this is something that a lot of employees don't really appreciate the value of this, because what you pay as an employee and what I pay as a foreign service retiree is 1/3 of what the health insurance actually costs. The government puts in the other 2/3. So you'd be giving that up. And then also, if you leave the government, you will lose your FEGLI life insurance, and that can be replaced on the private sector pretty easily. If you resign, you get to keep your TSP account with the money you put in it. And if you've been in the government in TSP for 3 years, you get to keep the matching funds that your agency contributed. And that's your TSP account. You can leave it in TSP. You can move it to some other retirement account. You can change the investment mix in it. You know, it's your money. And when time comes, you can withdraw from it. So you get to keep your TSP. And also, working in the Foreign Service, you've earned some Social Security credit. You obviously get to keep that. You go on into the private sector, work a number of years, earn more Social Security credit, then eventually apply for Social Security, and your Foreign Service time will count as well. So these are the financial things you lose if you resign before you can retire. And I just wanted to cover that, knock it out of the way, and then the rest of the presentation, we will focus on retirement. So the first question is, when can you retire? And obviously there's on the screen, you can see various options. Most people who in the Foreign Service who retire voluntarily go for the age, at least age 50 with at least 20 years of service. That's kind of the Foreign Service benchmark. So that means you have to be at least age 50 with at least 20 years. So if you're 50 years with 19 years of service, you need to work another year. If you're 49 years old with 20 years of service, you need to work another year to you're older. So you need to get the at least age 50 with at least 20 years of service. Another option is for those of you who maybe entered the Foreign Service in your mid to late 40s, as long as you have 10 years of service, you can retire at what is called your minimum retirement age. And for people born in 1970 or later, that's age 57. So even if you have fewer than 20 years of service, you can retire after 10 years, but only when you reach your minimum retirement age, so not age 50. And then if you really join the Foreign Service kind of late in life, all you need is 5 years in the Foreign Service at age 62 or older to get what will be obviously a fairly small Foreign Service pension. In all of these cases, you have to have at least 5 years in the Foreign Service. So as you'll see on a later slide, you can add in time you had in the military, time you had in the Peace Corps and VISTA, time you had in the civil service. That's all great. That'll increase your Foreign Service pension. But you have to have at least 5 years in the Foreign Service, and you have to retire from the Foreign Service in order to get the Foreign Service retirement calculation that I'll show you in a slide or two. So those are voluntary retirements. Involuntary is typically when your time in class expires or when your 6-year window to enter the senior Foreign Service expires. And for example, I ticked out at age 58. So it's quite common in the Foreign Service. And here there are a couple different cases. If you're an FS1 or above and you tick out, you get an immediate pension starting the next month, no matter what your age. So you can be 46 years old if you tick out at that age and you're FS1 or above, and your pension still starts the next month. If you're FS2 or below when you tick out, it gets a little more complicated. If you're FS2 or below and you tick out and you're over age 50, then you're good to go. You get a pension starting the next month. But if you're under 50 and you're an FS2 or below and you tick out, then you come under what's called the Annuity Exception. And in that case, you don't leave the service. You stay in the service, you keep working either in your current job or go on to another job, and you stay until your 50th birthday, and then you're given an immediate retirement. Now, the Annuity Exception is not a law, but it's a policy that's in the FAM, and it's been in effect for almost 50 years. And it was put in place following the suicide of Foreign Service member Charles Thomas, who ticked out at age 46 with 18 years of service, didn't get a pension, didn't get anything, couldn't find a job, and unfortunately committed suicide. And at that point, the issue went all the way to the desk of President Ford, and the Annuity Exception was created, and it's been the case ever since then. The other possibility is that you can retire at age 25. Excuse me, sorry for the phone. You can retire with 25 years of service at any age. So if you join the Foreign Service when you're 21, 22, 23, you can still retire on it if you tick out within 25 years later. And that's pretty rare because few of us join immediately out of college. And then the final kind of normal retirement is mandatory retirement. And famously, unlike the civil service, in the Foreign Service, we are out by age 65, unless the president has appointed you to ambassador, assistant secretary, and the Senate's confirmed you, or the director general gives you a very rare temporary extension. So we're out by 65. So those are kind of the most common retirements. And there's some other categories. And if you take the Foreign Service Institute's retirement courses, the Office of Retirement goes to them and spends 2.5 hours actually going through this and some other annuity issues. So I would really encourage you to do that if if you're at all considering, excuse me, one of these more rare retirement categories. But again, one is a deferred annuity. If you leave with at least 10 years of service, when you reach your minimum retirement age, you can get a small annuity later in life. Then at age 62, with at least 5 years of service. And of course, in the Foreign Service, like the Civil Service, if you become seriously disabled, there's a disability retirement. But it's pretty rare because the standards both in the Foreign Service and the Civil Service for that kind of disability are pretty high. So how much do you get? Before I wade into this kind of dense slide, the key kind of idea here, or the key thing to focus on, is the high 3 average salary. And so what this means is a key factor in the calculation of your annuity is what your average salary was in the last 36 months of your service. Now, actually, it could be any time in your service, but it's very rare in the Foreign Service to take a pay cut, toward the end of your career. Now, this only is your salary and locality pay, so it doesn't include danger pay, hardship pay, any things like that. And in this case, the example I use is that the high 3 average salary is $150,000. So maybe the person 2 years before retirement earned $140,000, and then with a increase the next year earned $145,000. Actually, anyway, I messed that up, but you get the idea. That's the average salary you had over a 3-year period. So the total income divided by 3 is your average salary. So that's a key factor in your calculation. And in the Foreign Service, we get 1.7% of that for the first 20 years. And then it drops down to getting 1% of that high 3 salary for any years beyond 20. So in this example, you see the person getting 1.7% of the $150,000 for the first 20 years, and then that's added to 1% of that same high 3 for the next 10 years. And in this case, this person is like me, had a 30-year career. So that gives you an annual pension of $66,000. And you'll see that that's a lot lower than the $150,000. So under our current retirement plan, this annuity is not going to replace your income. That's why the thrift savings plan is so important. And that in that example, in this case, the $66,000, that's before there's a reduction if you decide to leave a survivor benefit for a spouse. And that's before your health insurance and life insurance premiums. And that's before your federal and state and District of Columbia, if applicable, withholdings are taken out. So you see, it's a solid amount of money, but it's not going to, pay all your bills in retirement. So we'll discuss in a few minutes Social Security and TSP. The calculation, if you tick out, is the same. And it may disappoint you, this bottom line here, when I kind of punt the ball and say that for other types of retirement, it varies. In this case, it gets really complicated, and you really should do some reading. And on the checklist that was accompanying this webinar invitation, there's some references that you can look at. And then, of course, as I'll say again, the Foreign Service retirement planning seminars will really drill down on these different types of retirement. So what do you get? If you make it to the retirement goal line and you qualify for immediate retirement, you get a monthly payment for life, and that's for you. And then if you predecease a survivor, then your survivor gets a survivor's pension for life. And if you're under 62 and this is foreign service and civil service, we get something called an annuity supplement. And the theory here is that we are covered by Social Security. We pay a ton of money into Social Security, but we can't start drawing it until age 62. But the federal government lets both foreign service and civil service, in some cases, retire before 62. So they put in a bridge payment called the Annuity Supplement. So if you retire at 58, you got to wait for at least 4 years to you start Social Security. So there's this bridge payment until then. And it's basically a rough estimate of it is what the Social Security would pay you if they were able to pay you before 62. And if you go to the Social Security website, they have something called My Social Security, and I really encourage you to sign up for that. And that gives you access to your actual Social Security account with your earnings and years of service. And that'll give you an estimate of what your Social Security, not a very good estimate of what your Social Security payment will be starting at age 62. And that is in a ballpark sense what the annuity supplement is. If you take the FSI retirement courses, they'll have a very busy chart that shows you how to exactly calculate the annuity supplement. So if you want to know the gory details, then take the FSI training. Social Security, again, that's a monthly payment for life starting no earlier than 62, and you can wait to as long as age 70. And I'll explain a little more on that in a couple slides. TSP, when you retire, you have your TSP account. You can leave it there, you can move it, you can change what it's invested in, and you decide when to withdraw and how much to withdraw. So FEHB health insurance, you keep that and it's subsidized. And in any open season, at the end of each calendar year, you can move from the Foreign Service Benefit Plan to Blue Cross to Kaiser, throughout the rest of your retirements, but you get to keep the FEHB coverage. And then FEGLI life insurance, you get to keep that. Now, if you do take the FSI training, you'll see a very, very busy slide about your FEGLI life insurance options at retirement. So I just want to highlight one thing is that out of all of those, many options, what about 2/3 of federal employees do when they retire is they choose the following option. And that option is you keep your basic coverage. So for example, you retire at age 59 and your FEGLI life insurance is $160,000. So you keep that and you pay for it. You pay a monthly premium until you reach age 65. And then at age 65, you don't pay a premium anymore, ever. It becomes free. But what it does is at 2% a month over the next approximately 4 years, it goes down until it drops by 75% of value. So if you retired with $160,000 FEGLI life insurance, after age 65, over a period of about 4 years, it would drop down to $40,000. And the theory on that, why a lot of people do that, is that they figure, hey, I don't have a pension anymore. I'm not paying for kids in college. I don't need to leave a whole bunch of insurance to anyone. I just need, money for a funeral and everyone to have a nice party afterward. So that is an option, and that most people take. But if you want to keep a much higher coverage and pay for it, then that's totally up to you. Issues to consider. The thrift savings plan is an absolute key to our financial well-being and retirement, because our pension and Social Security will probably at best make up, half or 55% of our previous salary. So your TSP is critical. And your TSP is going to have to last, or should last, your whole life. So even if you're 60 now and you're going to retire tomorrow, hopefully you're going to be drawing on that TSP, 20, 30, who knows, 40 years from now. So you need to watch out for inflation. Now, we haven't had much inflation in the past 10 years, but those of us who are a little older will remember that there have been periods of high inflation. And given our federal budget deficit and other things, inflation could come back. So the $100 pair of shoes today, 20 years from now, might be $200. So if you want to beat inflation, you're going to need to put some risk into the stock market, have some of your TSP in stocks. And then you need to decide between the traditional and the Roth TSPs. Now, typically, I don't like to put a lot of text on the screen, but this gets a little complicated, so I did so here. So a traditional TSP and a traditional IRA is similar. Your contributions that you put in give you a tax deduction this year. So you can spend that money elsewhere. You can, if you're really prudent, you can invest it elsewhere, like in an IRA, or you can spend it on living expenses. But the downside is that when you go to retire and you go to take out that money's going to be taxed as current income. So that's a best option if you need the tax break now, if you need the money now to spend, or if you expect to face low tax rates after retirement. The Roth option is the opposite, is the flip side. You contribute money now after it's been taxed, so you don't get any immediate benefit. But when you eventually go to take out that money, you take it out tax-free. And of course, there are rules on how you have to qualify and everything, but this is the basics. So the Roth is best if you don't need the tax break now, you don't need the extra money now, or if you expect to face higher tax rates after retirement. Now, I don't have any idea what the tax rate will be 20 years from now or 30 years from now. I don't know if the federal budget deficit will cause the Congress to eventually raise taxes, or if they'll continue to kick that can down the road till we're all dead and gone. But these are the things you need to think about. And, and if you want, see a certified financial planner who can give you greater depth of knowledge than I possess. Other issues to consider: Social Security. And then a lot of questions I hear at FSI during these seminars is, will Social Security even be there in 20 years? And, weird things happen, as we've seen in the last couple of years, and who knows, but certainly with tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans depending on Social Security, I just have to believe it'll be there. Now, the rate it pays might be a little lower. New people entering the workforce may have to pay a little more. New people entering the workforce maybe will have to retire no earlier than 66 instead of 62. But I just got to hope that at some point Congress will do some tweaks to keep Social Security there. But I might be wrong. But for now, I think we can depend on it. The question is, when you start to take Social Security, you can take it as early as age 62, and you need to take it by age 70. And the longer you wait, the larger the monthly check is. But of course, the shorter the number of years you're going to get it. So for example, if you retire at 62, you can start taking it at 62, and you'll get that for the rest of your life. But the monthly amount will be lower than if you waited a couple years. So factor that in. Certainly, if you're 62 and you're still working somewhere else and you have income coming in, you may want to wait and take a higher benefit later. Especially if your aunts and uncles and parents lived into their 80s and 90s and things, and you think you might have good longevity too. Career length is something I want to put in. The Foreign Service, unlike the Civil Service, our careers can end much sooner than you might anticipate. You enter the Foreign Service and you expect to be in at age 65 as a career ambassador, but it doesn't always work out that way. I ticked out at age 58 as an FS1, and I ticked out right when I had two daughters about to enter expensive colleges. So that can throw a wrench in your planning. So just keep that in mind as you decide if you're an FSO, decide when to open your promotion window to the senior foreign service, things like that. Just keep in mind that you may not be working in the foreign service until your 65th birthday. It might end sooner. Post-retirement employment. A lot of us do leave early, because we tick out or whatever, and it's quite common to either come back to work part-time in the government as a reemployed annuitant, or to take a private sector employment. So when you take the FSI training, you'll see that it gets a little complicated, that that can impact your annuity supplement or your Social Security. And just to very briefly explain, so if you're retired before age 62 and you're getting the annuity supplement and you get substantial wage income, which is over $18,000 a year, then your annuity supplement can be reduced. Or if you have a big paycheck coming from the private sector, it can be eliminated. And Social Security is similar. Between age 62 and when you reach your full Social Security retirement age, which for most of you is probably 67, if you have a lot of wage income then and you're taking Social Security, you can have your Social Security monthly payment reduced. And this is, to guard against kind of double dipping kind of thing. So just when you take the FSI training, kind of focus on that, because if you do retire, kind of semi-early and you go back to work somewhere, these could be factors. This whole presentation is about money, but the whole life is not all about money. There are other things, factors in life, and health is one of them. So a key to a happy retirement is health. So as you go through your careers and beyond, pay attention to your health. And that's sometimes easier said than done. Benefits, I'm often asked, I've been in the Foreign Service for 2 decades and they promised me a pension. Can the Congress take that away or reduce it or change it? And the answer is yes. That's why AFSA and the civil service unions and the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Organization are out there lobbying Capitol Hill always to defend our hard-earned retirement benefits. So most people think it's very unlikely that a current retiree would have their pension reduced. But the thing I worry about is the government contribution to our health insurance, because it really is 2/3 of the cost, and that's unheard of in the private sector. So some future Congress wanting to, trim the budget deficit could make us pay more for our health insurance. And of course, if there are tax increases down the road to cut our government budget deficit, then that would eat into your retirement income. So keep that in mind. With the webinar invitation was a checklist of things, and I'm going to briefly go through them. And the printed checklist that was linked, and it's also on the AFSA website, has actual references where you can read a State Department ALDAC about the topic or read something else about it. So I always start with beneficiary designations, because every year there are cases where an employee or a retiree dies and the money doesn't go to spouse 2.0 because the beneficiary designation was unchanged, giving it to spouse 1.0. So for example, when I joined the Foreign Service, I put my mom down as my beneficiary. And if I had never changed that to my wife, then when I die, the money would go to my sister, who's the next of kin of my deceased mother. And my sister doesn't need the money, my wife does. So just make sure your beneficiary designations are up to date. If you have a death in the family, or if you get divorced or married, just get them updated. I mentioned briefly earlier that you can increase your Foreign Service pension by getting credit for any or not any, but certain kinds of prior government service. So for example, I was in the US Army for 3 years, and I took steps to get credit for those 3 years. A lot of people were in the Peace Corps. You can get credit for that. And if you were in the civil service before joining the Foreign Service, you have that retirement credit, but the money you contributed is sitting over with the Office of Personnel Management. It's not down in Charleston with the Foreign Service pension system. So you need to proactively take steps to transfer that money from the Civil Service Fund to the Foreign Service Fund. In this case, given OPM's historic level of efficiency, this can easily take a year. So you want to do this way before you submit your retirement application. And also you need to watch your service computation date, because the date the SCD that you probably have seen for years is your leave service computation date. And for that, you get credit kind of for any federal service. But in order to get retirement credit for it, you may have to, for example, in my case, I had to pay money to get my military credit, because when I was in the military, I obviously didn't contribute to the Foreign Service pension system. So you need to, especially if you want to retire, on the day you have 20 years exactly of service, which I don't suggest you do, you want to make sure that that SCD, the service computation date, covers all of your retirement, that everything's accounted for. And the way to make sure all that is taken care of, if you're at state, if you look at the last line of this slide, HRSC at state.gov. So if you're in the State Department Foreign Service, you can email HRSC at state.gov and say, hey, I was in the Air Force, I was in the Peace Corps, I was in the Civil Service at Justice or State or Treasury, and I want to get a retirement credit for that. And they'll get you pointed in the direction of filling out the forms to do that. If you're in AID, Agriculture, Commerce, you would go through your own human resources folks to start that process. And then the final thing on this slide is divorce. The Foreign Service, unique in the federal government, has unique provisions regarding divorce that come out of the Foreign Service Act of 1980 in order to protect the non-working spouse, to guarantee him or her a pension. So the Office of Retirement at state, and this is for Foreign Service, state, AID, Commerce, Agriculture, whole Foreign Service, the Office of Retirement at state needs to review that divorce documentation. Any divorce from any time you've been in the federal service. So if you got divorced when you're in the Marine Corps, if you're going to put that Marine Corps time into your Foreign Service pension, they need to look at your divorce documentation. And then the director of the Office of Retirement will issue you a letter explaining how they interpret your divorce documentation to impact who gets what from your pension. And do this sooner rather than later, because sometimes the divorce documentation is frankly defective. An attorney who doesn't know the Foreign Service Act may not use the correct words, even though it looks plain to you that the intention was that the ex-spouse gets nothing, the federal courts have not interpreted that way unless there's an express waiver of the Foreign Service retirement benefit. So ask the Office of Retirement to review that, and to do so, email hrsc@state.gov. They'll tell you if they want you to mail it in or scan it in or whatever. Let's see, okay, TSP, I've already mentioned this somewhat, but maximize your contributions to the best of your ability, as much as you can contribute, up to the limit, obviously. I contributed to TSP for 29.5 years, and I'm one of the TSP millionaires you may have read about. And that came in really handy, again, when I ticked out and I had 2 daughters going to expensive universities. So contribute as much as you can, and you can then draw on that nest egg in your retirement. Again, as I said before, you want to try to beat inflation. with some stocks in there, and again, see a financial advisor and then determine your own risk tolerance, and then select between Roth and traditional accounts. Estate planning and the FSI training, there's about 2.5 hours on this. So obviously I'm not going to go down that road. I'm just going to say that in almost every case, you're going to want to have a will, a power of attorney, medical directive. So if you don't have those, look into it. Leave. You're not allowed to take sick leave when you don't need it, and you shouldn't, because any sick leave you have accrued when you retire gets factored in to increase your pension. Now, you still need to have, for example, 20 years of service. But once you reach that requirement of, in this case, 20 years of service, any sick leave you have gets added on top when they calculate your pension. So like many of you possibly, I had well over a year of sick leave unused at retirement, and that was added to my pension. I'm getting more per month because they factored in that sick leave. Home leave, not so much. It's use or lose. The day you retire, if you, no matter, might have 95 hours of sick leave, of home leave, 95, days of home leave accrued, sorry, and that just goes away. So you need to either use it during your career or not. So keep that in mind when one post wants to keep you forever and the next post wants you there a week later. If you want to use your home leave, lobby for yourself and say, hey, I really need to take this home leave, because you can't take it, you lose it at retirement. And the other thing is annual leave. Whatever annual leave you have on the day you retire gets paid out to you a couple months later in a lump sum. And that's a wonderful kind of retirement, gift to get. 2 or 3 or so months later, you get, what can be a very large check if, like most of you, you're carrying kind of the maximum unused annual leave. So again, it's whatever is on your leave statement on the day you retire. And if that includes, whatever it is. So whatever you can manage to get on that piece of paper by the day you retire, that's what gets paid out in a lump sum. Long-term care insurance, by the time you're kind of in your 50s, mid-50s, certainly late 50s, you really ought to research this, think about it, because if you wait too long, and then you might have a medical condition and you can't qualify for it. So consider getting it. And again, in the FSI training seminars, they have information on long-term care insurance. AFSA, obviously we want to maintain your AFSA membership throughout your career and then into retirement. And right now, as an AFSA member, you're probably having your AFSA dues taken out of your paycheck. When your paycheck ends, that dues deduction ends. And so you need to kind of rejoin AFSA again, even if you've been a member for 30 years, to have that your dues, AFSA member dues in retirement taken out of your annuity. And if you want, you can write an annual check, but obviously we prefer the annuity deduction. So that's something you need to do at retirement in order to maintain your AFSA membership. Learn more. I'm a strong proponent of taking one or more of the FSI retirement planning seminars. If you're really early in your career and just kind of before or at mid-career, then the 2-day RV 105 is targeted at you. And on all of these courses now through the end of this calendar year, they're all being given virtually. So if you're in Paris or Ulaanbaatar or Tel Aviv or San Francisco, you don't have to fly into to FSI. You can take these virtually through the end of this calendar year. And what happens starting in January hasn't been determined yet. Anyway, so there's a 2-day course that covers the basics for those early mid-career. And then there's a hybrid course which has always been hybrid. It's called RV 106, and it's basically kind of half day online, and then a separate section where before you do the online, you watch information, on your own online. So that's another option. And again, that does drill down on the annuity and the TSP in the financial planning, which a lot of people find helpful to hear a couple times in order for it all to sink in. And the premier retirement planning seminar is the 4-day RB 101. And this is for people within 10 years of retirement eligibility. And if you can't get away the 4 days, there's 2 one-day kind of breakout segments embedded in the RV 101. And if you just want to hear all about annuities again, the 2.5 hour version instead of my 7-minute version, then RB 104 is the 1-day course to take. And then if you really want to drill down into financial planning and estates, RB 103. And again, through the end of this calendar year, these are all online. So, if you can sign up today, sign up today. If you're at state, go on the internet and, sign up. If you're outside of state, you can go on this internet site at the bottom and then see more information. But obviously the FSI retirement courses are for all the Foreign Service of all agencies. So AID, Commerce, Agriculture, you're more than welcome. And as Dolores mentioned at the beginning of the session, before maybe some of you logged on, there's a lot of information on the AFSA website under the Retirement Services page. There's a Retirement Planning 101 article that yours truly wrote. It's in the April Foreign Service Journal, but it's online also. We have both this retirement checklist that accompanied this webinar, plus a couple others I've created. One kind of retirement planning 5 years out, and one retirement planning 1 year out. So as you approach retirement, another checklist to go through for those of you who, like me, are kind of checklist people. On the AFSA website, we have some of the key State Department Office of Retirement cables about retirement benefits that will drill down into exactly how, do you get credit for your military service, exactly kind of what are the unique Foreign Service rules about the impact of divorce on retirement benefits. So feel free to look at those. And then again, as Dolores mentioned, there are a number of videos on the AFSA website of presentations. Thrift Savings Plan expert came, Social Security, financial planning, things like that. And then we have a lot of links to useful websites. So that is all I have. And so we'll turn it over to questions.
All right, I've got some from our audience. Okay, the first 2 are kind of granular. They have to do with the formulas that's used for annuities. The first is this. If you tick out as an FS1 after 17 years of service, does the formula get reduced to times 17 years of service or still 20 years of service?
It's 17 years. It's okay. Time served.
All right, time served. Okay, and the second one has to do with the high 3 and for an individual who had worked in another agency. And the question is whether his or her work at that other agency, if it is the higher salary, would that be counted?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in a special circumstance, if you had an SES position at somewhere else or something, or and your salary was higher then, as long as it's salary and locality pay, not any kind of weird bonus or whatever, then certainly. But the Office of Retirement will have no idea, and you'll have to really reach out and tell them that, because they would have no idea that at your prior agency you earned more.
That's a valuable piece of advice. And this does lead into a more general question. Does the annuity, is the calculation include locality pay, or if you're overseas, any of the special categories of pay that you might get, language, danger, COLA, et cetera?
Okay, so your pension is calculated based upon your base salary, plus if you're serving in the United States, your locality pay. Now, locality pay is higher in San Francisco, Houston, and some other places. So some of you may be able to finagle a final assignment there. So, I wouldn't redirect my career to do that, but you could increase your foreign service pension if you end up at a higher locality pay place. Now, overseas. When you're overseas, under current law, you get overseas comparability pay, which is only 2/3 of Washington, D.C. locality pay. And I can assure you, AFSA for the past decade has been lobbying to increase that, and will continue to do so until we succeed, but we're not there yet. So overseas, what you take home is 2/3 of the Washington, D.C. Rate. Now, no one in their right mind would serve overseas in their last 3 years of service if that's what your pension was calculated on. So Congress, at least 20 years ago, put in a new provision where your retirement, your high three from overseas is calculated as if you had been receiving Washington, D.C. locality pay rate. So there's no penalty. There's no financial penalty in terms of a pension for serving overseas during your final years of service or your years of high three earning.
Okay. All right.
But I didn't answer, but that's all that's in there. No danger pay, no hardship pay, no language pay. So it's base pay and locality pay or overseas comparability pay.
All right. Thank you, John. This is a broader question. From your perch as a former head of the retirement division, what are the most common mistakes that people make or oversights in their retirement planning?
Well, in the Foreign Service, we're really pretty lucky because our retirement is calculated at Columbia Plaza, at least when they come back from the pandemic. And then the state finance office down in Charleston finishes it up. And then so it's all in-house state. And so if there's any little glitch, then Charleston just calls up to Columbia Plaza and they work it out. The civil service, unfortunately, OPM handles it. And so your civil service colleagues may say that, they had to wait 3 months before their first payment or something. We don't have that in the Foreign Service, except in the rarest circumstances where the employee almost intentionally sabotages their own retirement application, by waiting to the day they retire to say, oh yeah, but I had this military service, and oh yeah, I was in the civil service, but I haven't transferred the funds. So, oh yeah, I was divorced, and here's this really complicated divorce decree. So as long as you, and there is a checklist, retirement planning 5 years out on the AFSA website. As long as you kind of take care of prior service, and any divorce decree and things like that, it's really kind of hard to sabotage your retirement application. And then obviously, if you take the FSI training and you already have looked at that really complicated chart about FEGLI, then when you go to fill out your application, you don't have to ponder the 12 options. You just have already decided that, hey, I want to go with this option or that option. And then also survivor benefit, you need to decide in advance if you want to choose a survivor benefit for your spouse. And if you're a tandem couple, you may well not, because your better half has his or her own pension. But for everyone else, most everyone else does select the survivor annuity. Okay.
Yeah, that question actually came up in our chat about the survivor benefit for tandem couples. On to the next. There's a question about clarification on the MRA provision. Is it 55 to 57 or 57? in terms of
So
the age?
there's this chart that starts at 55 and goes to 57. And so for people born in 1970 or later, it's 57. But if you're born in 69, it's 56 and 10 months or something. I don't have the chart, but they have it in the FSI training. So yeah, if you're 1970 born or later, which I think a lot of the audience is, then it's 57. But I was not born in 1970, so for me it was a different number. But it's in that range, and there is a chart in various places on the internet, and it's featured prominently in the FSI annuity session.
Okay, here's a question about lifetime federal health benefit coverage at subsidized rate. Is this for the employee only, or if the employee predeceases, does it follow on to the surviving spouse?
It follows on to the surviving spouse, so as long as, and this is another reason that you really have to leave a survivor pension, because the only way a survivor can keep their health benefits is if they get a survivor's pension. So yeah, so the survivor would continue the FEHB at the subsidized rate.
Okay. Did you mention that I think there's a time period by which you need to add, let's say you get divorced and then get remarried, your spouse, your new spouse, to allow them to get the survivor annuity?
Right, absolutely. And it varies between whether you're in the old system or the new system. And I don't remember, in one system it's 2 years, in one system it's 1 year. But if you go, there's a website called the RNet. So it's rnet.state.gov, which is the Office of Retirement's internet site. And on there is, under the What's New section, is the annual Office of Retirement retirement newsletter. And there's a whole section there on electing a survivor benefit after retirement. So yes, there is a deadline. I don't remember for you all if it's 1 or 2 years. So I would say go with 1 year, because there is no waiver. I mean, if you can't, you can't say, I forgot, I didn't know, because literally in the law, the Secretary of State cannot waive this one. So if you do get married, remarried, or married or remarried, you need to make those elections within a time limit.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some pretty tragic situations come up with people forgetting to do that or not doing it within the stipulated period of time, and there is no recourse. So that's a very important piece of advice. We don't have too much time left. I'm going to try to get through these questions that have come through the chat. And the first one is, if I joined the Foreign Service late in life, I know that we've covered this, but I think it bears repeating, so that by the time I retire, I've been in the Foreign Service for 13 years. Do I get a pension at all?
So you need to retire on your 65th birthday. And it gets a little complicated, but retire on your 65th birthday in order to have the highest calculation. But as you saw in one of the charts, in the Foreign Service, if you're over 62, all you need is 5 years of service. So I would say, in terms of which calculation you get, take the FSI training, because it does get a little complicated. Yeah. But certainly you need 5 years of service to get a Foreign Service pension, and you can pick that up anytime starting at age 62.
Okay. This is very specific. What document does one look at to verify their service computation date?
Well, I don't have access to the the new State Department Employee Retirement Portal, and I haven't seen it, but I believe there's a section in there on it. But basically, you need, if you've been in the State Department Foreign Service or AID Foreign Service your whole career, you're set, because it's your Foreign Service career. It gets complicated if you have military service or civil service or Vista or a Peace Corps or certain things. And that's when you want to make absolutely sure that in the admin section of your electronic EOPF, they have that documentation that you bought back your military service, that you bought back your Peace Corps, that your civil service retirement contributions have been transferred. And if you're at state and there's any question, email hrsc@state.gov, and the Office of Retirement can, do an audit of your EOPF. And they'll say, well, based on what we see here, you have 23 years of service. And you can say, whoa, what about the time I was, a civil servant at the Department of Justice? Then they say, well, we don't have any proof of that. You need to send it to us. So it is good to check on this if you've been at other agencies or if you've been in the civil service way before you retire, so you can gather that documentation if applicable.
Right. Okay, I think unfortunately we only have time for one more question, and that will be, does your sick leave accrue and add to your pension even in the event of an individual taking a deferred retirement?
It does not. So that's another thing that you lose with a deferred retirement. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but a deferred retirement, you cannot pick back up you lose your health benefits and you can't pick them back up. So a deferred retirement is an option, but it's not a great one. Okay.
Well, I'm afraid that there are some questions we haven't been able to get to. We will certainly sort through them and deal with them in our next retirement newsletter, ones that are germane to our audience. And we really thank you. We hope this has been helpful. And thank John.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks. Bye.